God, I thank you for this opportunity to deliver your people from darkness into the light, and from the power of Satan unto your power. I have done everything with due diligence to uphold, defend, and respect that. For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints. Chaplain General Brigadier General Ernest Maseu blessed the day in those applicable terms. Captain Zimasa Mabela. Fear is an acronym which represents false evidence appearing real. As you can see, each word or each term has its meaning. Fear is what has driven many people not to want to constitute with me. Fear is that which people have been taught relative to my name, and you are empowered with the responsibility to train all naval officers to ensure that false evidence does not appear real. You will understand it to be true that law or conduct to strive, when you go to Microsoft Word, type in the word strive, right click on it, and you will find that your synonyms are basically strive, endeavor, attempt, try, or go all out. And as you do that particular research, you will understand that in National Anthem, we say to God, let us live and struggle for freedom in South Africa, our land. The God who is the source of joy, we say to him, let us live and endeavor for freedom in the universe, our home. And we ask to God, through the highest note, to let us live and attempt for freedom in South Africa, our land. It is only a slave who lives and struggles, endeavor or attempt for freedom in their land. God acted at chapter 26, verse 17 to 18 to deliver me from the people and from the Gentiles unto whom I am now sent, to open their eyes and to turn them from darkness to light, and from the power of Satan unto God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and inheritance among them which are sanctified by faith that is in me. At Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 9, the Lord put forth his hand and touched my mouth, and the Lord said unto me, behold, I have put my words in thy mouth. Satan is anything that is opposite to good. For God is good all the time, and all the time God is good. That's why God is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. For the commandment is the lamp, and the law is the light, and reproofs of instructions are the way of life. Fellow South Africans, anywhere in the universe, our home, after watching this video, we shall live and enjoy freedom in the universe, our home, and our rights enshrined in the Bill of Rights of the Constitution shall be respected, protected, promoted, and fulfilled. And those who are against or oppose me shall cause you to live and struggle or attempt for freedom in South Africa, our land, and our rights in the Bill of Rights of the Constitution shall not be fulfilled, promoted, protected, and respected. It is indeed true that I command all to live and enjoy freedom in the universe, our home. The officer corps is the heart and soul of any military organization. It must be the reservoir of character and integrity, the fountainhead of professional competence, and the dynamo of leadership, as General Matthew Ridgway teaches us. I now present the Officer Corps of the South African National Defence Force to all people who must understand that in these waters we protect the roots that connect us all, from the South African tip of the African tree. Let us live and enjoy freedom. And Captain Makatesi would ask that Lieutenant Commander Mangolele, what can I do for you? And I shall say, let us determine the national anthem in terms of Section 4 of the Constitution, and release a signal stating that it is with honor, dignity, courage, discipline, integrity, loyalty, and pride that equality includes the full and equal enjoyment of all rights and freedoms as obligated in terms of Section 9(2) of the Constitution. To promote the achievement of equality, legislative and other measures designed to protect or advance persons or categories of persons disadvantaged by unfair discrimination are taken to proclaim the terms "Let us live and strive for freedom in South Africa, our land," are replaced with the terms "Let us live and enjoy freedom in the universe, our home," in the national anthem. And any person who wishes to inquire that may contact me at 084-835-9161. This signal must be released by you as the officer commanding discipline. Kindly fulfill your functions in mission to provide dynamic quality naval officers through in your mission to provide quality naval officers through dynamic training to serve and defend me and my country in accordance with the Constitution and the law, and with honor, dignity, courage, and integrity, for many of our seniors have betrayed their oath of office and will try by all means to command or threaten you not to act in terms of Section 7(2) of the Constitution and respect the rights in the Bill of Rights as obligated therein. I have suffered damage or loss as a result of an act or omission arising from any training or service under the Defence Act. I do believe that I am at a training institution, and I follow this particular law, which explicitly sets out that compensation in case of injury or disability is in terms of Section 57 of the Defence Act, which provides that for the purposes of this section, member includes an employee deployed with the Defence Force. Any member or former member of the Defence Force, and you must understand that it is the law of the land that is applicable to any member or former member of the Defence Force. Whether you believe that I am a member or a former member of the Defence Force, I kindly ask you to only fulfill the applicable terms of Section 57(2) of the Defence Act, and understand that any member or former member of the Defence Force who has suffered any damage or loss as a result of an act or omission arising from any training or service under this Act, whether or not legal proceedings have been or are to be instituted, may in writing apply to the compensation board established by Section 3 of the compensation, subsection 3 for compensation, setting out fully the grounds on which the application is based, the extent and the nature of the damage or loss, and the compensation desired. It is indeed true that the Chief of the South African Navy has since 22 November 2022 refused to release this particular signal that tells everybody that 99004046 MC Lieutenant Commander S.V. Mangwalele is not on or before 8 August 2018 convicted in terms of Section 105 of the Defence Act 2002 as unlawfully and intentionally displayed in the DoD PESOL system that is to be corrected with immediate effect, and make a warrant voucher payment of 1.5 million rands to the member in terms of Section 57 of the Defence Act 2002. You will understand it to be true that I will request you to alter the nature of this signal and release this signal after our engagement as the officer commanding the discipline of the entire defense force, as we are the only people that wear white in the military. We are the only military force that drills with a sword. And in that regard, you have to understand it to be true that it is this, as a person who knows the meaning of the term conviction, you must be faithful to the Republic and train them with honor, dignity, courage, discipline, integrity, loyalty, and pride, in that I am not convicted as alleged in the DoD PESOL system. Bravo Zulu Captain Zimasa Mabela for commanding the Master-at-Arms, who is the senior warrant officer appointed in a naval base or naval unit in a shore establishment, who is known as the Master-at-Arms and on board a ship as the coxswain. His or her appointment is approved by the Chief of the South African Navy, and within his or her own unit or ship has authority over all ratings regardless of their rank. And military discipline is in terms of Section 020702 at Chapter 2 of St. GP1 Delta, that the Master-at-Arms is the adjutant of his or her unit or ship and shall carry out the duties as laid down in the Military Discipline Supplementary Measures Act 16 of 1999, the Military Discipline Code, the first schedule to the Defense Act 44 of 1957, MDC, and the rules promulgated in terms of Section 44(4)(b) of the Military Discipline Supplementary Measures Act. And the Master-at-Arms called me on 6 October at 13:30, informing me that you are available to see me at 1100 Bravo on the 9th of October 2023. And Commander Sylvester Mangolele, for your attention that the court upheld an eviction order against myself, such that I must live and enjoy freedom in the universe, our home, in this particular environment. And the reality is, this is an order that is causing me to say that the Navy is unfairly targeting me. And subsequently, I am assumed guilty until proven innocent in terms of Section 105 of the Defense Act, which stopped my salary since 8 August 2018. The reality which Mr. Marcel Duvet could not be called by any court of law to come and account for this particular action. And your availability on 09 October 2023 at 1100 to serve and defend the country and its people in accordance with Section 34 of the Constitution and the law at Section 101 of the Defense Act with honor, dignity, courage, and integrity. You need to understand that integrity includes the code. The code is in terms of Section 64 of the Defense Act, which delineates discipline. And discipline is what I have kept to this particular day to ensure that I do not desert my duty as obligated in terms of Section 13 of the Military Discipline Code. Instead, I did not ask any person for any employment to say, employ me such that I may earn salary. I had to live in indignity of asking people for their hard-earned money to ensure that my inalienable right to food and water is achieved and sustained to this particular day. Integrity is something of a fuzzy word, so let me tell you my definition. People with integrity tell the truth and they keep their word. They take responsibility for past actions, admit mistakes, and fix them. They know the laws of their country, industry, and comply both in the letter and spirit, and abide by them. They play to win the right way by the rules. And access to court in the rules, the supreme rule of all rules, which is the Constitution, is such that everyone has a right to have any dispute that can be resolved by the application of law decided in a fair public hearing before a court, or where appropriate, another independent and impartial tribunal or forum. This is an appropriate moment wherein I ask you, as the officer commanding the terms honor, dignity, discipline, courage, loyalty, and pride, to ensure that we are in a position where all things are done in accordance with the Constitution and the law. And I ask you to ensure that the obligations imposed in terms of Section 34 of the Constitution are fulfilled, as you can see before you. An application of the Bill of Rights is such that it applies to all law and binds the legislature, the executive, the judiciary, and all organs of state. A provision of the Bill of Rights binds the natural, you as a citizen, or a juristic person, you as a captain in the South African National Defence Force, if and to the extent that it is applicable, taking into account the nature of the right and the nature of any duty imposed by the right. When applying a provision of the Bill of Rights to a natural or juristic person in terms of subsection 2, a court, in order to give effect to a right in the bill, must apply, or if necessary develop, the common law to the extent that legislation does not give effect to that right, and may develop rules of the common law to limit the right, provided that the limitation is in accordance with Section 36(1) of the Constitution. Understand it to be true that it is for the first time that somebody returns to unit of discipline where they have learned discipline, and ask that everybody who says that I am not disciplined must come to discipline itself and tell discipline that this member does not have discipline. It is happening for the first time, and you need to do it with absolute diligence and zeal so that we can uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution as the supreme law of the Republic. And it is indeed true that a juristic person is entitled to the rights in the Bill of Rights to the extent required by the nature of the rights and the nature of that juristic person. You are a juristic person as a captain who must train future generational leaders in the South African Navy. And those future generational leaders must teach the current leaders the correct way as independent to one another. This is the determination of the national anthem. When you look at the Bill of Rights, at Section 7(1), it tells you that this Bill of Rights is a cornerstone of democracy in South Africa. So without this Bill of Rights, it means that there is no democracy in South Africa. It means that everybody that is in jail must come out of jail. It means that there is no law to protect and defend. It means that you must not go to work. Because this Bill of Rights, it enshrines the rights of all people in our country and affirms the democratic values of human dignity, equality, and freedom. You cannot be happy to jail a person and say that person broke the law, but every day you go to work to break the law and not call Lieutenant Commander Sylvester Molane Madala Mangolele. And you claim it to be true that in terms of Section 7 of the Constitution, the state must respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights in the Bill of Rights. And we must uphold that the rights in the Bill of Rights are subject to the limitation contained or referred to in Section 36 or elsewhere in the Bill. Diligent performance of obligations. All constitutional obligations must be performed diligently and without delay. That is obligated in terms of Section 237 of the Constitution. Understand it to be true that equality is such that everyone is equal before the law and has the right to equal protection and benefit of the law. Equality includes the full and equal enjoyment of all rights and freedoms. You cannot be in a position where you say, let us live and strive for freedom, and think that you are fulfilling the obligations imposed in terms of Section 9.2, which obligates that equality includes the full and equal enjoyment, not striving, but enjoyment of all rights and freedoms. And understand that the state may not unfairly discriminate directly or indirectly against anyone on one or more grounds, including race, gender, sex, pregnancy, marital status, ethnic or social origin, color, sexual orientation, age, disability, religion, conscious belief, and culture, language, and birth. All that I have been saying is that you must bring to life these applicable terms with honor, dignity, courage, loyalty, integrity, discipline, and pride. To change the national anthem only requires you to uphold what is written in the Constitution. Any step after that, it's circumstantial to the change. And the change is for only all people to ensure that the Constitution of the law of the land is upheld and abided by. What you will understand is such that when discrimination on one or more of the grounds listed at subsection 3 is unfair unless it is established that the discrimination is fair. So let us establish that particular reality. Let us ensure that this particular reality that is being told to the nation, such that the court orders a former Navy officer as mental state to be examined after nonsensical demand, is false evidence appearing real. It is not nonsensical to ask any other person to comply with the law of the land. And I shall inform all of you to understand what the universe is misled to believe. And the universe is misled to believe in the following applicable terms. At Pretoria, a court has ordered the Ministry of Defense to assist in tracing the relatives of a former high-ranking official in the South African Navy, so that they can consider launching an application in terms of the Mental Health Act for the officer to undergo mental observation. The Western Cape High Court acting judge said it would be in the interest of justice to possibly examine the mental well-being of the officer who has not been identified for compassionate reasons. The order followed yet another application by the officer earlier this month, in which he made a long list of demands, including that President Cyril Ramaphosa cited as the second respondent must amend the national anthem. The officer said the phrase, "Let us live and strive for freedom in South Africa, our land," must be replaced with "Let us live and enjoy freedom in the universe, our home." He also called for an order forcing the president to imprison those various Navy officials for life for torturing him. It appears that things went wrong, especially after the officer was charged with 5 counts of alleged misconduct within the Navy. It is not clear from the High Court judgment what the charges entail. But over the past few years, the officer has bombarded the court with various nonsensical urgent applications running to more than 500 pages each. He was eventually told that before he litigated again, he had to obtain the permission of the court to do so. In his latest application issued earlier this month, the officer said the national anthem affects us all, including our children and their children's children. He said as a child's best interests were of paramount importance in every matter concerning the child, the court had to step in urgently. He said in his court papers, I am the defense force. I serve and defend my country and its people in accordance with the Constitution and the law, and with honor, dignity, courage, and integrity. He called on Justice Raymond Zondo to ensure that all the applicant's witness would be at the court when the applicant's case was called. Another demand was that the court manager had to ensure that there were loudspeakers and a projector available in court that day, as he said that he would be presenting video evidence. The officer further said in his court papers, I defend and protect the Constitution, the territorial integrity and the national sovereignty of the Republic and our democracy against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I have my doubts about the state of his intellectual function and the degradation of his memory. This may explain his rap court papers, the judge said. He ordered the Minister of Defense to trace the relatives of the plaintiff and provide all the necessary assistance for them, if they so elect, to file an application in terms of the Mental Health Act, if they so wished. The judge said the minister must file a report to the court regarding the situation. It was further ordered that if the officer's family were unwilling to make such an application, he then had to present himself to the district surgeon on or before March 9 next year for a mental evaluation. The judge postponed the matter to March 15, 2022. You must understand it to be true that this particular reality is as a result of a judgment. And that particular judgment was read and analyzed by an editor, and that particular reality is what has been reported to the universe at large. Threat to territorial integrity is what informed the editor, who was misled in that the said former officer is an under 18 years old lieutenant major. You will understand it that in the judgment that it is written that the plaintiff was a member of the armed forces of the Republic. He held the rank of lieutenant major in the fleet command of the South African Navy, stationed in Simonstown. He was charged with 5 offenses relating to what was seen as offensive behavior, 4 of which related to his failure to appear at his place of duty, and 1 to both failure to appear and making a false entry on the day register. It is the events arising out of these developments and their consequence in his life which, in my view, appeared to have had an adverse effect on the plaintiff. Good people, when you sit and you look at what is at the bottom in terms of the certificate of promulgation relative to the 5 charges, is that in all 5 charges I was found not guilty. And when you understand that when you are not guilty, you must be happy. But according to Satan, is that when you are not guilty, you must be sad. And these things have an adverse effect on your life. So the reality is that the truth is being presented to all of you in reverse by the court itself. That is why I am at the military, asking the military to intervene and ensure that this particular reality sees justice for all people to live and enjoy freedom in the universe, our home. Because as you can see here, is that The judge tried to find Section 105 of the Defense Act here, and there is no Section 105 of the Defense Act. It's just only the Military Discipline Code in terms of Section 14B and Section 19.5 as an alternative, and Section 14B and Section 19.5 as an alternative, Section 14B and then Section 30A and then Section 14B of the Military Discipline Code. There is no Section 105 of the Defense Act in this particular issue. The courts are just trying to make everybody believe that I have been convicted, because they know true in their hearts that what is conviction and how a person is convicted. So the reality that you are facing is false evidence appearing real in the court judgment. And he says further at paragraph 12, in my prima facie view, there is a need to ascertain whether the plaintiff can appreciate the nature of the orders granted against him, and consequently the nature of the proceedings before the court, and what he in law can competently place before the court at this point of his intended litigation. In my view, the absence of coherent provision of evidence and prayers for the relief sought, and the general conduct of the plaintiff both inside the courtroom, within the courthouse and outside, warrants some observation and investigation in his psychological, if not psychometric position. I have my doubts about the state of his intellectual function and the degradation of his memory, as explained his warped papers. The court further explained that the Minister of Defense would be in a better position to help trace the relative of the plaintiff. And I promise you now today, the Minister of Defense came back and said, I could not find the relatives of the plaintiff. And subsequent to that, I said, this is the incompetence that I am talking about, that the current Minister of Defense is incompetent to act in terms of Section 81 of the Defense Act. But let us continue and hear that so as to provide them with an opportunity to consider to file an application as envisaged in terms of Section 27(1)(a) of the Mental Health Care Act. I find that the plaintiff should go for observation in the interest of justice. In the interest of justice, instead of us complying with the law that says equality includes the full and equal enjoyment of rights and of all rights and freedoms. They say, no, you are crazy, go. It is in the interest of justice for your mental health to be looked at. So to follow the law in the Republic of South Africa in accordance with this particular judge whom you are paying salary every day is not good. People are crazy when they follow the law. They want people that do not follow the law. If I did not follow that law, then I would not have qualified, in his view, to go for mental evaluation. For these reasons, I make the following order, which he made. The Minister of Defense is to trace the relatives of the plaintiff and provide all the necessary assistance for them, if they so elect, to file an application as envisaged in terms of Section 27(1)(a)(1) of the Mental Health Care Act 2002 before the end of the month of February 2022. And when one looks at the applicable terms of Section 27(1)(a)(1 of the Mental Health Care Act, it reads, application for assisted care, treatment and rehabilitation services. An application referred to in Section 26 may only be made by the spouse, next of kin, partner, associate, parent, or guardian of a mental health care user, but where the user is below the age of 18 years on the date of the application must be made by the parent or guardian of the user. So you would understand it to be true that in accordance with those applicable terms, the court is of the view that I was under the age of 18. as a lieutenant major, and there is no rank of lieutenant major. It is an embarrassment of our territorial integrity for us as the National Defense Force to accept that there is a rank of lieutenant major in any military in the world. It will be incompetence in our part that we cannot afford to teach or train any young officers for generation to come. The reality comes that the Defence Force and all its members, including all South Africans, are obligated by an Act of Parliament in terms of Milestone 1 of the South African Defence Review 2014 to arrest this decline in critical capabilities through immediate directed interventions. And the Honorable Justice Tulare and the Chief Justice of the land must come and account before the officer commanding the highest discipline of the land in terms of Section 35 of the Constitution and the law at Section 40 of the Criminal Procedure Act, and with honor, dignity, loyalty, and integrity. Principles of cooperative governments and intergovernmental relations is such that all spheres of government and all organs of state within each sphere at Section 41D are obligated to be loyal to the Constitution, the Republic, and its people. It is the law of the land that we must employ to preserve peace, national unity, and indivisibility of the Republic, secure the well-being of the people of the Republic, provide effective, transparent, accountable, and coherent government for the Republic as a whole. And it is indeed true that all spheres of government and all organs of state within each sphere must respect the constitutional status, institutions, powers, and functions of government in other spheres, and not assume any power or function except those conferred onto them in terms of the Constitution. And the Defense Force is such that it has the primary object to defend and protect the Republic, its territorial integrity, and its people in accordance with the Constitution and the principles of international law regulating the use of force. Good people, it is indeed true that all organs of spheres and all organs of state within each sphere must exercise their powers and perform their functions in a manner that does not encroach on the geographical, functional, or institutional integrity of government in another sphere. And that is why one is before discipline at Gordons Bay and asking all to come to Gordons Bay in discipline in response of this particular truth. Subsequent to that, I bought a flight ticket to go home because my grandmother was in hospital. And to respect the 15th of March, I booked a flight ticket home for the 17th of March at 1300 to land in Johannesburg at 1500, flying from Cape Town. And I respected the court and went to court on 15 March as ordered. And in doing so, I was on time and in discipline, and accompanied by my partner who had witnessed this court order by Justice Tulare, stating that having considered the papers and heard the parties, considering the papers, it means you considered that I said equality includes the equal and full enjoyment of all rights and freedoms as obligated in terms of Section 90 of the Constitution. And you have heard me. You make the following order: the immediate detention of the plaintiff at Falkenberg Hospital for purposes of investigation and report on completion of examination including but not limited to a 72-hour assessment and findings of a medical health care practitioner. This is the order by the judge when I said the Constitution is the supreme law. This is what the universe is led to believe when I said the Constitution is the supreme law. This is the punishment, treatment that is degrading, cruel, inhumane in every way, and torturing a person in every way, that I have received from the court when I said fulfill the obligations imposed in terms of the Constitution and the law. And understand it to be true that we are soldiers, we are not civilians. It is civilians working in the courts, and civilians are not the supreme law that we defend. We first defend the supreme law, and with that supreme law we defend these civilians who are not following the supreme law. Subsequent to that, a court order was issued in the very same terms, and I was taken to Falkenberg Hospital, and Falkenberg rejected my arrival, saying that it did not follow procedure. I was taken back to court, and court said, go back again to Falkenberg Hospital. Falkenberg Hospital for the second time rejected my arrival and said, there is no way in law they can accept me. And subsequent to that, the court said I must come back the following day. I came back the following day with dignity, and then I was handed over custody by the South African Police Service of a person suspected of being mentally ill and likely to inflict serious harm to himself or herself or others. So for me to change the national anthem, it is deemed that I will inflict serious harm to myself or yourself. It is the truth that Satan does not want you to live and enjoy freedom from the source of enjoyment itself, which is God. Satan wants you to live and struggle for freedom from the source of enjoyment, which is God. So Satan has caused the whole nation of the Republic of South Africa to say to God, let us live and struggle, attempt, endeavor, or try hard for freedom. And those who say, let us live and enjoy, they are suspected of being mentally ill and likely to inflict serious harm to themselves or others, as envisaged in terms of Section 41 of the Mental Health Act. And I am referred to Mr. Mangolele, and in so doing, directly violating the authority of the President, who commissioned me as a commissioned officer holding a permanent commission. And then they said that one is suffering from, they are sending me to New Somerset Hospital, and in that particular regard, that was done on 16 March 2022. And subsequently, I had to forfeit the flight going to my mother in a dying bed. I could not honor my mother as God intended because of Satan. And the reality is that I was made to be in this particular state. And after that, I woke up with honor, dignity, courage, and integrity to say, fix this particular reality and set it down for hearing in terms of Section 18 of the Superior Courts Act on the 22nd day of March 2022 at 15:50, or as soon thereafter as counsel may be heard under the following circumstances, in which the dies indicae in terms of Section 18 is 2 hours, as obligated in terms of Volume 3 of the Practice Directives issued by the Chief Justice. This was after my grandmother passed on the 21st of March 2022, and then I was subsequently released for that particular reason to go and pay my last respect to my grandmother, Leta Kukumnana Machila. And the reality of such is such that the court was not available to fulfill the applicable terms in terms of Section 18 of the Constitution of the Superior Courts Act. What happened is that in service and defense of my country and its people in accordance with the Constitution and the law and with honor, dignity, courage and integrity, on Friday 6 October 2023 at or about 13:38, the Master-at-Arms of the South African Naval College in Gordons Bay called Lieutenant Commander Sylvester Volane Mangolele on 0848359161 and informed him that the officer commanding the words honor, dignity, courage, discipline, integrity, loyalty and pride is in the People's Navy is available on Monday 9 October 2023 at 1100 Bravo, and that the duty driver will not be available for transport. And I subsequently informed all people, including the Master-at-Arms, that the college called to inform me that the officer commanding words honor, dignity, courage, integrity, loyalty and pride is available to constitute with me on Monday 9 October 2023 at 1100 Bravo. This is done in terms of Section 34 of the Constitution and the law at Section 101 of the Defense Act, and with honor, dignity, courage and integrity, and in service and defense of the country and its people. Papa Ote. And then I subsequently forwarded the link of the video that I have made and asking or calling upon the officer commanding. On 9 October, I arrived at SIA, South African Naval College, in service and defense of my country and its people in terms of those applicable section as invited by the officer commanding the words honor, discipline, courage, integrity, loyalty and pride, but I was obstructed or interfered with and induced or attempted to be induced to neglect and antithetical to the supremacy of the Constitution and the rule of law. As I have explained before, that access to courts is in terms of Section 34 of the Constitution and Section 101 of the Defense Act empowers the Minister, the Secretary for Defense or the Chief of Defense Force may at any time or place convene a board of inquiry to inquire into any matter concerning the department, any employee, which is myself thereof, or any member of the Defense Force or any auxiliary service, any public property or the property of affairs or of any institution or any regimental or sports funds in the said force, and to report thereon and make recommendations. The same can be done by the Chief of Service and may at any time or place convene a board of inquiry to inquire on the same matter and make recommendations thereon. And subsequent to that, the Chief of Service may, subject to such condition as he or she may impose, in writing delegate any power conferred upon him or her in terms of subsection 2 to any member or employee of his or her service or division, as the case may be. And that particular case right now is the officer commanding the words honor, dignity, courage, integrity, loyalty, and pride. You will understand that I'm calling upon you not as personal, but as functional. And in function, you are the officer commanding South African Naval College. It is true that a delegation in terms of paragraph A does not prevent the chief concerned from exercising the power in question himself or herself. So you would understand that whatever that you are doing in full employment of the Chief of the Navy, in full employment of the Chief of the Defense Force, in full employment of the Chief of as the Secretary of the Defense or the Minister of Defense. Automatically, you must just only tell them that I have followed these applicable terms of the law, and then this is what I have produced after those particular applicable terms, as is the will and an obligation imposed by the Constitution and the law. It is true that behold that which I have seen. It is good and comely for one to eat and to drink, and to enjoy the good of all his labor that he hath taken under the sun all the days of his life, which God giveth him, for it is his portion. I shall do this particular video and inform you the reality that it is with honor, dignity, discipline, courage, integrity, loyalty, and pride in that I demand all my inalienable rights, and in particular, my right to have access to health care services, including reproductive health care, sufficient food and water, and social security, including appropriate social assistance, as I am unable to support myself and my dependents. This is the law of the land at Nandos. If one violates such law, they go to jail. You cannot have a shake it up without paying 44 rands. If you come and have shake it up and then you don't pay 44 rands for it, you will go to jail because you have broken the law of Nandos. Subsequent to that, you can buy any food in Nandos, and then I ask God, God, what do I do to get this without violating anything? God said to me, go to the light. For the commandment is the lamp, and the law is the light, and reproofs of instructions are the way of life. In the law at section 27, and its supremacy is such that everyone has the right to access to health care services, including reproductive health care, sufficient food and water, and social security, including, if they are unable to support themselves and their dependents, appropriate social assistance. The state must take reasonable legislative and other measures within its available resources to achieve the realization of each of these rights. And when you understand it to be true that these rights include sufficient food and water, understand it to be true that I am asking for sufficient food and water to be fulfilled, because the courts expect me to live without my right to sufficient food and water, and they expect me to be in a position where I live with dignity as a senior officer in the South African Navy, asking people for their hard-earned money to sustain my inalienable right to health, my inalienable right to sufficient food and water. That is why I'm asking you, Captain Zimasa Mabela, as an official of the state, the employee of the state, who must respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights in the Bill of Rights, to ensure that the state does take reasonable legislative and other measures within its available resources to achieve the progressive realization of each of my right to healthcare services, including reproductive healthcare, my right to sufficient food and water, and social security, including, when I am unable to support myself and my dependents, appropriate social assistance. And it is indeed true that no one may be refused emergency medical treatment. And also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of his labor. It is the gift of God. With that gift of God, I shall come back and say to you, the Defense Force has the general principles where that the following principles govern national security. National security must reflect the resolve of the South Africans as individuals and as a nation to live as equals, to live in peace and harmony, to be free from fear and want, and to seek a better life. The resolve to live in peace and harmony precludes any South African citizen from participating in armed conflict nationally or internationally, except as provided for in terms of the Constitution and then or national legislation. National security must be pursued in compliance with the law, including international law. National security is subject to the authority of Parliament and the national executive. The minister in any organ of state defined in Section 239 of the Constitution, as well as all members of the Defense Force and any auxiliary service and employees, must, in exercising any power or performing any duty in terms of this Act, have regard to the following principles. The formulation and execution of defense policy is subject to the authority of Parliament and the National Executive. And it is indeed true that the Parliament has enacted the South African Defence Review 2015 for all that to arrest the decline in critical capabilities through immediate directed intervention as the first milestone that must be achieved, and that they reorganize and rebalance the defense force as a foundation for future growth, and ensure that create a sustainable defense force that can meet other defense commitments in interim end state of the defense review, and then also enhance the defense force capacity to respond to emerging threats in the embryonic dynamic environment. And the defense force must defend the Republic against an imminent or dire threat. And it is an imminent or dire threat to live and struggle for freedom. For Cabinet has endorsed the Defence Review and it has further been tabled in Parliament, I can therefore say that this document is truly a product for all South Africans, by all South Africans, as affirmed by the Honourable Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula as the Minister of Defence Force at the time. Discipline in the military is such that rigorous military discipline training develop self-control, discipline, character, and integrity. Sound military discipline founded upon respect for loyalty to and properly constituted authority is the cornerstone of professional and functional defense force. Military commanders remain responsible for the conduct of their subordinates and must have appropriate mechanisms at their disposal to address failures in discipline. A revised and cohesive military disciplinary system, a minor corrective measures system, and consequent administrative measures are required to meet the constitutional imperative that the defense force must be structured and managed as a disciplined military force. That is what the chairman of the review has said, which is Mr. Rolf Meyer. And he also further stated that the defense force is a unique instrument and an important lever of power at the disposal of the state to pursue its national security and foreign policy priorities, and is consequently at the core of South African national security. The deployment of the defense force must thus be with full range of instruments which government can bring to bear both domestically and regionally. However, the defense force provides the means of the last resort when other instruments of state are unable to protect or defend South Africa. That is why I am at the last line of defense, as all organs of state have failed. Understand it to be true that the primary object of the defense is to defend and protect the Republic, its people, and its territorial integrity. I will take it that you understand that that is the first goal of the military. You understand that is the first goal of any military organization anywhere in the world, which is to defend its country. I have done this in service and defense of my country and fulfilled this applicable goal by doing this particular video. And the task thereto, the first task is to deter and prevent conflict and to protect national interest. The second goal is such that one has to safeguard South Africa. In doing so, safeguard the borders, safeguard critical infrastructure, and cooperation with the police service. And in so doing, ensure that information security is tight. it is understandable that anybody functions in discipline. And it is with this discipline that I will end this broadcast for you to understand its reality and understand it to be true that I shall return, for God has blessed Africa. Papa Ote.